Harihi Om. Sahana Bhavatu. Sahana Bhunaktu. Sahaviryam Karavavahai. Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Jaya Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So yesterday we started talking about the jivas, the conditioned and the liberated states, Jai. So we continue. From the above facts, one can see a great difference between the essential nature, or the svarupa, of the Lord and the jiva. The Lord is the controller of Maya, and the jiva is attracted to Maya, and finally becomes bound up by Maya. Footnote 57, 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 9, text 15. My Lord, by your unbroken transcendental glance, you are the supreme witness of all stages of intellectual activities. You are eternally liberated. Your existence is situated in pure goodness, and you are existent in the Supersoul without change. You are the original personality of Godhead, full with 6 opulences, and you are eternally the master of the 3 modes of material nature. Thus, you are always different from the ordinary living entities. As Lord Vishnu, you maintain all the affairs of the entire universe, and yet you stand aloof and are the enjoyer of the results of all sacrifices. Since the jiva is a part of the whole consciousness, Krishna, the jiva should be understood to be a conscious particle different from Krishna. Yet the jiva, being an energy of the Lord, must be considered to be non-different as well. Therefore, Mahaprabhu identified the jiva as both different and non-different from the Lord, and taught the principle of achintya bheda bheda, inconceivable difference and non-difference. Giving the examples of the rays of sun and sparks from the fire, he concluded that the jivas are eternally different but yet integral parts of the Lord. Right, so one can't say where the sun ends and the sun rays begin. But one can distinguish the two, because the sun rays, they're still coming in through the window. Yet I'm not on fire. If I was on the sun, I would be on fire. So although it's providing heat and light, it's doing it to a lesser extent than the original source. And same with the spark and fire. A spark can ignite dry wood and start a whole forest fire. So it's simultaneously the same, because it has the same quality, and under the right circumstances, it can again, but at the same time, it's not the whole. Continuing, it is not possible to conclude that the jivas are the supreme Brahman or God by occasional statements of the Vedas such as Aham Brahmasmi. Because sometimes the Mayavadis say like that, Aham Brahmasmi means I am Brahman. It means I am the supreme Brahman. That's how they say. Krishna or Vishnu Tattva is the only supreme Brahman. Because the jiva is a type of spiritual or conscious entity, he can also be called Brahman. The supreme Brahman, Tattva, Krishna, also spreads himself in one form as Paramatma throughout the material universe, and in a negative condition as the impersonal, formless, imperceptible, unattainable, inconceivable Brahman effulgence outside the universe. As Krishna's inconceivable vibhinamsas, the jivas take up a variety of material forms, such as devas, humans, yakshas, rakshasas, beasts, birds, insects, reptiles, and ghosts. Among all the forms, however, that of the human is considered the best, for it is most suitable for practicing devotional service. But even in the human form, the jivas experience both hellish existence and heavenly delights. Forgetting Krishna, the jivas under the control of Maya seek to fulfill a variety of desires. So in that list we have the demigods, yakshas and rakshasas, who are quite powerful beings. And then the lower species such as animals, birds, insects, reptiles, and strictly subtle entities like ghosts. So you see we have, it's a big spectrum. But humans actually considered the best. And we've heard that the Devatas are actually hoping to be able to take birth as human beings, because it's a bit easier. When one is surrounded by a standard of enjoyment that is quite high, it's difficult to focus on Krishna being the center, right? So the Devatas, they have all sorts of facilities. I didn't record this. And as such, they get distracted. And we can read about the times that they're distracted in Srimad Bhagavatam. There are plenty of times. And so the human form of life, it's a great advantage, because although there is some material enjoyment, there's enough suffering that reminds us that this place isn't actually an enjoyable place. It's not where we belong. Heavenly planets, you can enjoy there for quite a long time. Even the subterranean heavenly planets, where there's no talk of Vishnu, but everybody's just enjoying. They have piety, but it's dark piety instead of light piety.
How is it possible?
How's it possible? So, if one follows the principles of the Vedic literature without actually accepting Lord Vishnu, following the principles means piety. Not accepting Vishnu means darkness. So the subterranean heavenly planets, they actually enjoy more than the demigods, because the demigods, it's mentioned in the 5th canto, they always see the Kala Chakra, day and night, the sun's going. So they know that time is ticking away. Even though they live a very long time, still, time is ticking away. Tick-tock, 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 tick-tock. Down below, they don't see such things. So they're just enjoying. They don't know if it's day, night, they don't care. They're just enjoying. It reminds me of, I think you have them on the Black Sea too, casinos. You don't live on that coast, you're on the other coast. Casinos, they don't have any windows, they don't have any clocks. They keep it dark, and they try to keep you as inebriated as possible. They'll bring you drinks, and they just want you to enjoy, gamble, watch the shows, whatever else you do at these casinos. They don't want you conscious of what time it is. Same thing. So the only time the residents of the subterranean heavenly planets feel any sort of distress is when they see the Sudarshana Chakra coming, because they know their head's about to get cut off. So only at the end of their life is there a little bit of distress. So in one sense, it's quite enjoyable. But you have to work a lot to get that. And it's dark, so you don't know Lord Vishnu. So it's just enjoyment. There's no meaning to it. The Devatas, there's a little bit of stress, but at least they know that they are doing a service for Lord Vishnu by whether it's controlling the weather or whatever they're doing, whatever they have been deputed to do. They're doing some service, so they're also purifying their existence, whereas the subterranean heavenly planet, Walas, they're just enjoying. And then once they finish that enjoyment, then again, human, try to build up some more karma, hopefully light this time instead of dark. But human, that's the form of life where we can get the most benefit, meaning it's the platform where the spiritual process is much easier with fewer distractions. Of course, we can see the animals, the humans, well, it depends on how you look at it. You could say humans have a much easier time than animals, but sometimes it looks like that's not the case, because animals, they don't really stress so much about food, they just go and get it, right? They don't worry about stowing away extra or accumulating more than they need. This is a human thing. So in that sense, it could be easier to be an animal, but there's no spiritual upliftment. It's just working off karma. So the human form of life, extremely rare, extremely valuable. Continuing. The minute conscious particle, the jiva, is by nature the servant of Krishna. Sambandha. Yes, thank you. The complete conscious being. So Krishna is the complete conscious being, and we are the minute conscious particle. That is the relationship by nature, Sambandha. Service to Krishna is the nature of the jiva. Service to Krishna. Abhideya, Hare Krishna, thank you, is the nature of the jiva. Forgetting this eternal nature, the living entities remain in bondage. When the jivas remember their eternal nature, they attain freedom. Hare Krishna, look at that. It's really starting to kick in. The inherent power, or Shakti, of the living conscious entity is also present in the tiny conscious jivas, but in minute degree. Therefore, the jivas are almost without power by their very nature. But in the liberated state, the jivas gain the Shakti from Krishna, and to that degree become powerful. Just by thinking themselves spiritual entities, the jivas cannot obtain that power. This type of liberation is called nirvana. By identifying themselves as servants of Krishna, the jivas obtain power from Krishna and finally attain eternal bliss. Fear, the byproduct of material illusion, is removed completely. The various forms that the conditioned jiva takes are but the results of individual actions. Footnote 58, 11th canto, chapter 22, verse 37. The material mind of men is shaped by the reactions of fruitive work. Along with the five senses, it travels from one material body to another. The spirit soul, although different from this mind, follows it because it's attached. Though the jiva accepts the qualities of the material world, they are not the constitution of the jiva. So we can say, quite accurately, that we are all misidentifying, each of us. Because we're identifying with the body, but we are actually spirit soul. So, although we accept the qualities of the material world, it's not our constitutional nature, it's our conditioned nature, right? If a person believes that the jiva is actually a product of Maya, then that person is a Mayavadi. The jivas are, in reality, pure spiritual entities under the spiritual potency. But because of the marginal nature of the jivas, they have a tendency to become bound by Maya. But they are only forgetting their inherent nature, service to Krishna, the pure jiva state. Form and transformations are all spiritual, right? So we're just forgetting it. Everything is actually still there, just covered up. Footnote 59 is from the 11th canto, 26th chapter, verse 1. Having achieved this human form of life, which affords one the opportunity to realize me, and being situated in my devotional service, one can achieve me, the reservoir of all pleasure and the supreme soul of all existence, residing within the heart of every living being. Because they are of infinitesimal nature, very small, the living entities become bound by Maya. First, the subtle mental body covers the form, and then, when the time comes to act in the world, the gross body, suitable to the action it deserves, covers the subtle body. The subtle and gross forms are but abnormal conditions induced by Maya upon the pure soul's form. Therefore, there is some similarity between the two forms, right? Because the form we get is based on our desires, our unique blend of desires. And so it's quite easy for us to identify with it. Continuing.
So first we are getting
Subtle body.
it means wrong concepts, wrong desires, wrong ideas, and according to this we get the gross reality.
Yes. So the first thing we do, we as the real ego, the spirit soul, servants of Krishna, the first thing we do is misuse our free will and identify as the false ego. I am independent from Krishna. So ego just means I am, identity. We have that. In its pure form, it's I am servant of Krishna. So the first thing we do is forget that we are servants of Krishna, and we consider that we may be independent controllers and enjoyers. Then, having identified with that false ego, then we have this intelligence and this mind that are analyzing and accepting and rejecting things based on our conditioned nature, our false ego of being independent from the Supreme Lord. And then based on those analysis and acceptance and rejections, then we get the suitable gross body. Continuing. Earth, water, fire, air, and ether make up the gross body. Mind, intelligence, and false ego make up the subtle body. Footnote 60. Bhagavad Gita 7, texts 4 and 5. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. Besides these, O mighty armed Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mine, which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. So we see that the spirit soul is actually superior to matter, but as long as we're misidentifying, as long as we're identifying as independent from Krishna, then we have that false ego, that material mind, that material intelligence, and the material body. So we become overpowered by our covering. But it was due to that initial misuse of free will. Continuing. On removing these coverings, the jivas attain liberation from Maya. Then the spiritual forms of the jivas are revealed. The liberated jivas perform their actions through the senses of the soul: eating, recreation, sexual activities with women, excretory functions, sickness, injury, and suffering due to want, as found in the material world, do not exist in the spiritual body. These activities affect only the gross body, but by identifying with the material body, the jiva falsely accepts all these activities and thus experiences material pleasure and pain. Footnote 61. So this is 11th Canto, Chapter 22, texts 51 and 53 through 56. An unintelligent mind, failing to distinguish himself from material nature, thinks nature to be real. By contact with it, he becomes completely bewildered and enters the cycle of material existence. Who remembers the analogy we discussed yesterday that explains that this material world, how is it? It's not false, but it is. How's it worded without looking? It's not false, but it's illusory, right?
Temporary. It's not false,
But it's temporary. What did I say?
illusion.
But it's I said illusory? Okay, but it's temporary. Who remembers the analogy that was given? I think it was yesterday.
No, it wasn't yesterday.
Because today is Thursday, and yesterday we didn't have class. So Tuesday.
I wasn't there, so.
Yeah, there were only two of us.
That's right. It was just.
But I don't
I
remember.
was here too. It was the three of us. It had to do with seeing something and thinking it was something else. Rope and snake. You see, he wasn't even here, and he knows.
Oh, I thought the bird, you know.
Oh, because we were talking after about the, yeah. Also, very similar. Yeah, so a man sees a rope coiled up on the ground. He's identifying that it's a snake, so he thinks he's in danger. The rope is real, the idea of a snake is real, and the danger that a snake presents is also real. But that rope is not a snake, so there's actually no danger. The danger is just perceived. So in a similar way, this material world, although it appears to us to be very real, very dangerous, very everything, we're very overwhelmed by this material world. A lot of suffering, a lot of anticipation to end the suffering, etc. It's all very exciting, in a very nervous sort of way. But it's not reality. Our real nature is something completely different. So, by identifying with the material body, the jiva falsely accepts all these activities and thus experiences material pleasure and pain. So therefore we have this material pleasure and pain. Next verse in the footnote, 53. Just as one may imitate persons whom one sees dancing and singing, similarly, the soul, although never the doer of material activities. Where was this verse 2 years ago when we were talking about how we're not the doer, but then we were talking about how, well, we're an aspect of action, so we're sort of the doer, but not? Somehow I didn't find this. I mean, we were talking about all the other ones, like, what is it? The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities which are in actuality being carried out by the three modes of material nature. Is that Kartahamiti Manyate? Is that the one? So, anyway, so here's another one. Just as one may imitate persons whom one sees dancing and singing, similarly the soul, although never the doer of material activities, becomes captivated by material intelligence and is thus forced to imitate its qualities. All right, so we're just imitating the qualities of the material nature, even though we're not actually on that level. We're actually superior to it. But having taken shelter of it, then we've become apparently subordinate. Then 54 through 56. The soul's material life, his experience of sense gratification, is actually false, O descendant of Dasharha. Just like trees' appearance of quivering when the trees are reflected in agitated water. Right? So you see the reflection of a tree, and it looks like the tree is actually shaking because the water is rippling, right? But the tree's not shaking at all. But you say, yes, it is. You know, I'm looking at it right now, and it's quite quivering, right? So just like in Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, the beginning, where it compares this material world to an imperishable banyan tree whose roots are growing upwards and its leaves are down, branches are down, leaves are the Vedic hymns. One has to cut down that tree with the weapon of detachment. The water that it's reflected upon is, who remembers? Desire. Good, thank you. So, we have to, with the weapon of detachment, eliminate this material desire and realize that we're not the reflection, that we're not the shadow, we're the substance, right? So we have to stop misidentifying with the reflection. Just like, or like the earth's appearance of spinning due to one spinning his eyes around, or like the world of a fantasy or dream. For one who is meditating on sense gratification, material life, although lacking factual existence, does not go away, just as the unpleasant experiences of a dream do not. So, if this is what we're meditating on, sense gratification, then it can't go away, even though it's not based in reality. This is what we're focusing on, right? This is why we remain here in the material world. Because we are spontaneously attracted to matter, right? When we are able to redirect our consciousness properly and eventually become attracted to Krishna, then all of this just fades away. Okay, that's footnote 61. Continuing. Although persons may be liberated, if they maintain pride in material knowledge or remain attached to negation of material existence, they cannot attain a spiritual body suitable for service to Krishna in the spiritual world. Footnote 62. Canto 1, chapter 6, verse 21, Srimad Bhagavatam. I regret that during this lifetime you will not be able to see me anymore. Those who are incomplete in service and who are not completely freed from material taints can hardly see me. Who can give an example of a person becoming liberated yet maintaining material pride and knowledge, and so are unable to attain a spiritual body suitable for the service of Krishna in the spiritual world? Because it sounds strange, right? How can you become liberated but not make it to the spiritual world? Because liberated means out of the material world, right? So where do you go?
Bharata Maharaj.
Bharata Maharaj.
He was on the level of Baba.
Uh-huh.
Then he became a deer.
Uh-huh. But was that deer out of the material world?
No.
Otherwise, very good try. Narada Muni in his previous life. Oh, so this is what this is referring to, but now, in that verse, but now what we're looking for, do you have it, Tulsi Prabhu?
I was thinking about the Brahmanas from the story of the wives of the Brahmanas.
Oh.
Because they had the fortune to see Krishna, which practically means perfection, but because they did not have the right consciousness, in other words, they were too much emphasizing on their knowledge and mantras and tantras, they actually missed the opportunity. Then later they realized and they said, the hell with our knowledge and our
training,
yes,
all of that.
vow.
I was thinking of something else, but that is a perfect example, because technically they're living in Vrindavan, so they're out of this material world, but they weren't able to enter into those pastimes because they didn't see the principle or the connection. So that is a perfect example. The one I was thinking of are the Mayavadis, who become detached from the material world. They spend a little bit of time in the Brahma Jyoti, but they still have these desires to perform punya karma. So they come back and they open hospitals and food shelters and homeless facilities, things like that. But yes, so just becoming liberated from matter isn't enough. We have to become attached to Krishna, not just detached from material nature. Because it's easy to understand, well, fairly easy, to understand that we can't be satisfied in the material world. So at least to want to be detached from material nature, that's fairly simple. But it's not enough. We have to actually want to be attached, well, we have to be attached to Krishna. Continuing, liberation achieved through devotional association gives rise to such a spiritual body. So this is how we uncover our spiritual body, not through negation of material desire, but through devotional association. Continuing, footnote 63. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 6, verses 27 through 28. And so, O Brahmana, Vyasadeva, in due course of time, I, who was fully absorbed in thinking of Krishna, and who therefore had no attachments, being completely freed from all material taints, met with death as lightning and illumination occur simultaneously. Having been awarded a transcendental body befitting an associate of the personality of Godhead, I quit the body made of 5 material elements, and thus all acquired fruitive results of work stopped. Continuing, liberation due to association with the jnanis is only a pretense of liberation. For the jiva, this is an unfortunate condition. Footnote 64, Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, 2nd Chapter, verse 32. O lotus-eyed Lord, although non-devotees who accept severe austerities and penance to achieve the highest position may think themselves liberated, their intelligence is impure. They fall down from their position of imagined superiority because they have no regard for your lotus feet. Continuing, in this chapter, the jiva's pure form, conditioned form, and form in liberation have been discussed in brief. What the jiva should do and not do will be discussed elsewhere. So as far as the nature of the jiva, are there any questions? No. No. Okay. Okay, good. So then part 5, Achintya Beta Beta Tattva. Krishna, this is the last topic of Sambandha. Krishna, his energies, his rasa, and the jiva in the conditioned and liberated state have been discussed in previous chapters, meaning previous sections of this chapter. In this section of this chapter, Achintya Beda Beda will be briefly discussed. First, Mahaprabhu's instructions on this matter will be given. And this is Adi Lila, 7th chapter, verses 121 through 126. In his Vedanta Sutra, Srila Vyasadeva has described that everything is but a transformation of the energy of the Lord. Footnote 65. This is Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 28th chapter, verse 40. The blazing fire is different from the flames, from the sparks and from the smoke, although all are intimately connected because they are born from the same blazing wood. So, when Srila Vyasadeva is saying that everything is but a transformation of the energy of the Lord, means just as smoke, sparks, flames, they're all parts of fire, but they're also different from the fire. They can perform the functions of fire under the right circumstances, but they are not the fire itself. Continuing, Shankaracharya, however, has misled the world by commenting that Vyasadeva was mistaken. So evidently, at least according to this, it's not okay to say that the Acharya is mistaken. This is a good thing to keep in mind. Because sometimes we, with our tremendous intellectual capacity, we learn something like Sanskrit, and then we decide, oh, actually, some of the acharyas, they were taking this the wrong way. Technically, due to Sanskrit grammar, this actually means something differently, right? And so what that is an example of someone being distracted by the details and overlooking the principle. Because the principle is the acharyas are giving Krishna's message without any interpretation, without any distractions, right? Without, here I am, turning back to the thesis of the book, because that's what we're always referring to. There are countless philosophies, but although attempting to reach the truth, they are all incomplete and mutually conflicting, being generated from illusory premises. So even knowledge of Sanskrit, which Sanskrit seems to be like, the spiritual language. But if we're influenced by these illusory premises, such as, I can know this philosophy better than the acharyas, then our so-called philosophy, although attempting to reach the truth, will be incomplete and mutually conflicting. And the only way to then find perfection is if we properly engage in Krishna Bhakti, which means not saying that an acharya is mistaken. Continuing. Thus, he, Sankaracharya, has raised great opposition to theism throughout the entire world. According to Shankaracharya, by accepting the theory of the transformation of the energy of the Lord, one creates an illusion by indirectly accepting that the absolute truth is transformed. Transformation of energy is a proven fact. It is the false bodily conception of the self that is the illusion. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is opulent in all respects. Therefore, by his inconceivable energies, he has transformed into the material cosmic manifestation. Footnote 66, from the 2nd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th chapter, verses 22 and 23. After the incarnation of the first Purusha, the Mahat Tattva, or the principles of material creation, take place. And then time is manifested, and in course of time, the three qualities appear. Nature means the three qualitative appearances. They transform into activities. Material activities are caused by the Mahat Tattvas being agitated, At first, there is transformation of the mode of goodness and passion, and later, due to the mode of ignorance, matter, its knowledge and different activities of material knowledge come into play. Using the example of a touchstone, which by its energy turns iron into gold and yet remains the same, we can understand that although the Supreme Personality of Godhead transforms his innumerable energies, he remains unchanged. Although touchstone produces many varieties of valuable jewels, it nevertheless remains the same. It does not change its original form. Right? So the idea is that the energies can transform, but the energetic does not transform. And this is the mistake of Shankaracharya. Continuing, same chapter, jumping up to text 140. When we speak of the Supreme as impersonal, we deny his spiritual potencies. Logically, if you accept half of the truth, you cannot understand the whole. Is this where in the purport they talk about the logic of half the hen? Yeah? Let's talk about the logic of half the hen. So, the logic of half the hen is that you own a hen, and hens lay eggs, and you can sell eggs to people who eat eggs and make money. And making money is nice because then you can spend money on so many things. Of course, to open temples or so many pious things. But the hen, not only does it lay eggs, but it also has to eat. So you have to buy food. So some of the money that you're making from selling the eggs, you have to put back into feeding the hen, right? And so some people think this is not a good situation. Instead, we just cut the hen in half. We keep the egg-laying, money-producing part, and we get rid of the part that is actually taking away from our profit, right? But you can't do that. You can try, it won't work. It'll no longer produce. I didn't move my marker. Continuing. To Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, the Lord said, Vedanta Sutra is the summary of all the Upanishads. Therefore, whatever direct meaning is there in the Upanishads is also recorded in the Vedanta Sutra or Vyasa Sutra. For each verse, the direct meaning must be accepted without interpretation. So early on in this book, we talked about direct meaning. What's the word for that? The other one is Lakshana. What's their direct meaning?
Mukhya. Mukhya.
Mukhya.
Mukhya vritti, Lakshana vritti. That's how I don't
Okay.
hear what.
And then there's Lakshana. What's the example? Does anyone remember the example given for Lakshana where you take the indirect meaning?
The boys are sitting on Ganges.
Yeah, it's talking about the cowherd men on the Ganga. But they know that since you can't stand on the surface of the waters of the Ganga, it means that they're on the banks of the Ganga. But wherever the direct meaning is actually possible, then that's what you take. That's the standard. You don't go for an indirect meaning when the direct meaning is perfectly clear. To the sannyasis of Varanasi, the Lord said, the Vedic sound vibration Omkara, the principal word in the Vedic literatures, is the basis of all Vedic vibrations. Therefore, one should accept Omkara as the sound representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the reservoir of the cosmic manifestation. It is the purpose of the Supreme Personality of Godhead to present Pranava as the reservoir of all Vedic knowledge. The words Tat Tvam Asi are only a partial explanation of the Vedic knowledge. Pranava is the Mahavakya in the Vedas. Shankaracharya's followers cover, meaning hide, this to stress without authority the mantra Tat Tvamasi. So I put this word hide there because the word cover can have two different meanings. Cover meaning to hide, and then cover means they're going over. What's the other way to say that? Like, we're covering the information of Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. So they're not covering in that way. They're trying to hide it, covering it over. So, yes, that's there. Then, Vedanta philosophy consists of words spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, in the form of Vyasadeva. The material defects of mistakes, illusions, cheating, and sensory inefficiency. That should say inefficiency. Inefficient. Yeah, but it says inefficiently. Inefficiency do not exist in the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Does anyone know the Sanskrit for those four ones? Brahm?
Brahma,
Vipralipsa,
Karnapatava,
Karnapatava,
and Arsha.
and? It's been a bit.
Yeah.
It's okay. It means we have to polish up our... Huh?
Cheating propensity.
Yeah.
Mistake. Tendency to commit mistake.
Anyway, the Upanishads and Brahma Sutra describe the absolute truth, but one must understand the verses as they are. That is the supreme glory in understanding. Sripad Shankaracharya has described all the Vedic literatures in terms of indirect meanings. One who hears such explanations is ruined. Shankaracharya is not at fault, for he has thus covered the real purpose, means hidden, the real purpose of the Vedas under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How's that? How'd that happen?
Because he is Shiva.
Because he's Shiva.
He is acting under the order of the Supreme Lord.
So we had a question a few weeks ago. Why would the Supreme Lord instruct one of his greatest devotee to cheat a whole bunch of people to misguide them away from true religion?
He's bringing them closer.
He's bringing them closer. How?
They want to get cheated.
They want to get cheated. Good answer. Absolutely. We're here in this material world because we want to be cheated. But at the same time, we also want to feel good about doing the right thing. Right? So during that time, there was a very, and still now, there's a very popular mood of wanting to feel connected to spirituality, yet at the same time be able to enjoy supremely. So, and that's a common thing. It happened with the Buddhists. It happens a lot. It happens with the Mayavadis. So, because of our desires in the material world, we get what we're asking for. So when we're sincere, Krishna sends us the absolute truth. When we're sincere with a mixture of, but I still also want to control and enjoy, but I also still really want to be connected to the absolute truth, we get a very unique mixture. And in order to facilitate that mixture, he sometimes has to give service to his devotees to do something that seems strange, right? Because if we all became sincere, actually sincere, and just wanted to have this supreme absolute reality, then these philosophies would fall off. During Lord Chaitanya's time when he was preaching, this actually happened, briefly, right? Because his preaching was so effective and they understood that You can't argue. You can't argue with this. This is the absolute truth. There's no question about it. It's hard to remain covered from something when the Supreme Personality of Godhead is sitting in the room and just like laying it all out there. But when we have these attachments to have a different concept of what's going on, then when the Supreme Lord leaves, again, it's not so hard to fall right back into that, because we really just wanted to enjoy in this particular way while still feeling good about ourselves. Under the order, okay. According to direct understanding, the absolute truth is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has all spiritual opulences. No one can be equal to or greater than him. Everything about the Supreme Personality of Godhead is spiritual, including his body, opulence, and paraphernalia. Mayavad philosophy, however, covering his spiritual opulence, advocates the theory of impersonalism. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is full of spiritual potencies. Therefore, his body, name, fame, and entourage are all spiritual. The Mayavadi philosopher, due to ignorance, says that these are merely transformations of the material mode of goodness. Shankaracharya, who is an incarnation of Lord Shiva, is faultless because he is a servant carrying out the orders of the Lord. Footnote 68. This is from Padma Purana, Uttarakhanda. Oh, no, it's not. This is from, yes it is. Yeah, okay. Uttarakhanda 62:31. Turn people, this is Krishna talking to Lord Shiva, turn people away from me by creating your own scriptures and hide my, should be capital, my identity. In the future, make these scriptures. And then Padma Purana Uttarakhanda further states, the Mayavad philosophy is incorrect. It is covered Buddhism. I will create it through a Brahmana in Kali Yuga. So this is explaining where this philosophy is coming from. So, Sankaracharya, who's an incarnation of Shiva, is faultless because he is a servant carrying out the orders of the Lord. Whose fault is it then? But those who follow his Mayavad philosophy are doomed. They will lose all their advancement in spiritual knowledge. Because when it all comes down to it, we still have free will. And until we actually want to serve Krishna with love, we will be cheated in very specific ways that are tailor-made to our specific desires. Pranava, or Omkara, is an indirect name of Krishna, the original sound of the Vedas, Shabda Brahma. This sound, pranava, is formed from the verb pranu, to sound, made from the prefix pra, very much, and the verb nu, to praise. Therefore, pranava, or omkara, is the sound incarnation of the Supreme Brahman, the person worthy of our praise and worship. Unfortunately, we praise and worship celebrities, politicians, wealthy people, not the possessor of all wealth, but, just some people that have more than we do. From Omkara, all the Vedas have appeared. Pranava is the seed of the Vedas, the Mahavakya, or principal sound. All other parts of the Vedas are particular statements supporting this conclusion, the person worthy of praise, who has a portion of a Bhagavad Gita verse that is saying this exact thing. You did it last time. It's in the 15th chapter. the verse number is the same as the chapter number. Vedaischa sarvam aham vedyo. So of all the Vedas, Krishna is to be known, right? All other parts of the Vedas are particular statements supporting this conclusion that the person is worthy of praise. So Vishnu is to be known by all of the Vedas. Shankaracharya, the formulator of Mayavad philosophy, minimized the prominent position of Omkara and proclaimed 4 specialized statements as Mahavakya. Number 1, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. Number 2, Prajnanam Brahma, Brahman is knowledge. 3, Tattvamasi, you are that Brahman. And 4, Ekam Eva Advitiyam. Advitiyam. Thank you. There is only one existent being. It's all one. Seeing a need to hide Pranava, the seed of the Vedas, because it proclaims pure devotion, Shankaracharya took these other statements as the essence of the Vedas and preached exclusive monism. So when we take parts of the Vedas out of context and we base our philosophies on them because of our material conditioning, then we are one of the countless philosophies, although attempting to reach the truth, are incomplete and mutually conflicting, being generated from illusory premises, right? Just because we're referring to the Shastra doesn't mean we're following the Shastra, which is why this book, this work of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, is so important, because it points out the principle of the Shastra. It shows that when discussing Shastra, as Lord Chaitanya said to Srila Sanatana Goswami, if you are not discussing, to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Sanatana Goswami, if you are not discussing the relationship between the living entity and the Supreme Lord, the ultimate goal and the process to attain said goal, then you are not actually talking about Shastra. You could be quoting Shastra, but if your conclusion has nothing to do with what your actual relationship is with the Supreme Lord, how to act according properly to that relationship, and the goal that one attains having acted accordingly to that proper knowledge, then that's not Shastra, so you're not going to attain the real goal. He taught that the conditioned jiva is simply an illusion produced by Maya, that Brahman is subjected to Maya, and that liberation for the jiva is the absence of Maya. By this philosophy, the pure relation of the jiva with the Supreme Brahman, which is Ambandha, becomes hidden. The import of all the Vedas has not been considered. What's the import of all the Vedas? Of all the Vedas, I am to be known. Right. So it's not being considered. Thus, Madhvacharya took other Vedic statements and established an opposing philosophy, right? Opposing to Shankaracharya. Dvaita Vada. However, because he did not consider all the Vedic statements, the full relation of the jiva to the Lord was not revealed. Ramanujacharya, as well, in his Vishishta Dvaita philosophy, did not show the complete relationship. Nimbarka Swami, propounder of Dvaita Dvaita, also preached a doctrine incomplete in some aspects. So these are, and we'll have one more, those are 3 out of 4 of the acharyas of the 4 bona fide sampradayas. Vishnu Swami also, in his Shuddha Dvaita doctrine, left some ambiguity. And so even these 4 heads of the 4 bona fide Vaishnava sampradayas had some incompleteness. In order to establish the eternal nature of prema, Mahaprabhu gave pure, complete teachings about the relationship of the jiva with the Lord Sambandha, through the doctrine of Achintya Bheda Bheda, and in this way delivered the world from the darkness of mental speculation. Just a quick side note before we end. If we visit Caitanya Mat, and we go to the main temple, and you can see these personalities, Vishnu Swami and Madhvacharya and Nimbarka and Ramanuja. How did I forget Ramanuja? He's usually sleeping right there. So we can see them, and if we're very eagle-eyed, if we get the right angle, to their right, you can see who they're worshiping. So if you're looking at Madhvacharya, you will see to his right there's a little nook, and it has Lord Brahma, right? And then there's one with Panchamukha Shiva, and then there's one with the four Kumaras, and there's one with Lakshmi. So we can see the head of the Sampradaya, who they're worshiping, and they're facing these four directions, and Lord Chaitanya brought all of these philosophies together with Achintya Bheda Bheda. It means all of the philosophies had valid points, but they were all incomplete in establishing the proper relationship between the jiva and the Supreme Lord. Any questions before we stop? Okay. Om Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.